So with that, I think we're going to turn over to Rob for his presentation. So everyone knows Rob, our principal broker. He's been doing compliance since he was 2. Right? He came out of the womb loving forms.
Yeah, exactly. I came out of the womb telling my mom, you did something wrong. Right? Where's the thing to get this thing turned on? Oh, here, right there.
There you go.
No, it's a bit. Yeah. All right, welcome everybody. So what we want to talk about today is we've got a bunch of things. We get questions and every single day. If you remember Jason Carlson, he's also part of the risk management team. So we are getting questions all the time, and a lot of them end up being repetitive questions and ways to do things. We know that you guys are extremely busy, always in a hurry. We also know sometimes we get a little lazy, so we try to take shortcuts. We just want to get stuff done. So I want you guys to know this. We are not here to make your life harder. Because if I make your life harder, that makes my life harder. So I promise you, anything that we implement, anything we do is because we are trying to make your life easier and have it done the right way. Because if it's done the right way, when it comes backwards, it ends up being much smoother. And then people always come to me and just say, well, I know you're busy, and so I didn't want to ask a question. And because they don't ask the question up front, we end up having a bigger problem on the back end, which then takes 10 times longer than if we would have just asked the question on the front end. So I would love to answer questions. If you have questions, you need help, please come see either Jason or I so that we can resolve the problem before it becomes a bigger problem. Okay. So that being said, what I've got, let's turn this light off. It'll be a little easier to see. Okay. So on Zoom, I assume you guys can see this. I don't know if anyone, you'd have to undo your mic for me to know, but okay. So what I've got is I've got 5 or 6 things that you are going to see, and if you haven't seen it, you will see it. Things that are coming up that I just thought would be helpful to bring to your attention. So there is really no particular order, but this is. I'm gonna, yeah, that'd be great if you do this, Nick. Yeah. So, okay, first thing that came up. So this came up about 2 or 3 months ago. You scroll it down just a little bit. Yep. This is a form that a brokerage is using, and it is gradually trickling out. This brokerage is in Vernal, but if they're taking listings that are just outside of Vernal, it's trickling around. So I've had to answer questions about this probably 6 or 7 times in the last 2 months. So I thought it would be great for you guys to know about it and see it. This document, that company, they made, and this is their version of seller's disclosures.
Okay.
And so the first question is, can they do that? Who believes yes? This is a participation class. Who believes no? Okay.
It's just that one page.
It's a front and back. So scroll down. On the back of it, I don't have the back side of it. Just stop right there. It's literally just more blank line. So it's allowing the seller to populate the information. So those that said that they can't do it, why do you guys think they cannot? Okay, it's a great answer. Any other thoughts?
Is someone from the state signed off on this?
Okay, it's another great question. And I'll answer these. Any other thoughts? Those that said that they can, why do you think they can?
If it's written by an attorney, it could be.
Okay, great answer.
That's been approved by the association, like state association.
Okay, so this goes back to Aja's question. So all great questions. Scroll it a little bit down. More for me, Nick. So let's start the state piece. So first off, the seller's disclosures that the UAR has produced, those are not a state required document. Those are not required by the state. So meaning, if it was a state required document, it would have to get approval from the state in order to be able to use that. And it would also be mandated that it be used. This, oh, sorry, I meant to go the other way. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you. Right there. So this, in our purchase contract, it says under section 7 of the REPSI, is there only one item that the seller has to disclose?
No, there's
Oh.
many.
There's, I want to say there's 11 potential items that the seller has to disclose. This is just item number 1 of the potential 11. And all it says is that the seller shall provide seller's disclosures. It doesn't say UAR approved seller's disclosures. It doesn't say anything specific. It just says the seller must provide seller's disclosures. So in answer to the question, this satisfies option A under section 7 of the REPSI. So that if they use this or when they use this and you receive it, they fulfill, the seller has fulfilled that obligation. Now that's, remember, that's only one item, number 1 of 11 potential other seller's disclosures that they have to provide. But they've provided this, and it may just say none. I mean, they've made this. Is there anything that the seller knows about? Nope, none. Now, I've personally talked to the broker. I don't agree with their decision in going this route, but that's their decision. Now, if you are representing the buyer, this is how I would recommend you handle this. Does your buyer have to be okay with just receiving this?
No.
It's up to your buyer. So if you got one of these, the way that I would respond to this is, appreciate that, thank you. My buyer has some additional questions. And I would download the UAR seller disclosures and send that to them. My buyer would like the answers to these questions. I'm having them fill it out. Because now you've made a request, specifically your buyer is asking certain questions. This then could fall under, I should have probably brought this in addition. Under section 10 of the REPSI, it's talking about seller's obligation. And it says seller shall provide any material fact that they have knowledge about the property. By giving this question to the seller, then this ends up being a material fact that the buyer is bringing to the seller's attention. So under the contract, they're obligated to disclose this. Now, here's my little asterisk. Okay. Deals with investors, deals with, you may ask questions and still the sellers choose not to answer the question. Okay. So what you guys need to talk to your buyer about is say, hey, as of right now, we've asked the question, the seller is not providing the answer. We're approaching our due diligence deadline. What do you want to do? You want to move forward, even though the seller hasn't disclosed stuff? Or do you want to cancel because the seller hasn't disclosed stuff? What do you want to do? They may decide to cancel and move on to something else. Okay, great. They may decide to move forward. And then if there ends up being a potential problem, just advise the client and just saying, hey, look, if there ends up being a potential issue, meaning something's wrong with the property, but the seller didn't disclose, or you felt that they should have disclosed, that's an issue that you're ultimately going to have to take in court if the seller is unwilling to resolve the issue. Are you prepared? You know, just if you want to move forward, just be aware. And any of these types of conversations, what is the number one thing you should do to protect yourself? What do you mean by that, Greg?
Email the client saying, per our conversation, this is what your decision is, please respond back. But it's
Okay,
true.
everything, what he's saying is spot on. Because I guarantee it, these are the questions that that Jason and I are having to handle all the time. When a problem happens, when a mistake happens, it's never the client's fault. Whose fault is it?
Yeah, just
I'm not saying it's your fault, but who does the client think the fault is?
Yeah.
It's on everyone else but them. It's never their fault. It's always yours. So when you can't back up what you have done, they are strengthening their position and you're weakening yours. So when a conversation like this, you know, it's an important conversation. We had one, for example, a situation over a refrigerator. A client had a past experience where when they got to closing, the refrigerator was supposed to be included, at least they thought it was supposed to be included. The other side thought it was not. So on this new transaction, the refrigerator, per the MLS, it was not included. The the buyer wanted to make sure that it was included. They ultimately went under contract and it was not included. And when they closed, and the conversation with the agent, we talked about this over and over again. When they closed, the buyer shows up with the property. The refrigerator's not there because it wasn't part of the contract. And that buyer said, no, I talked to you. We talked about this. You were going to include this. This is your fault, agent. Your fault, your fault, your fault, your fault. I'm like, do you have any proof to back it up? And it was on both sides. There was no conversation that talked about it. The evidence was in the contract. So the client didn't get a refrigerator. Now, I assume the conversation took place between the agent and the client. But do you think that client's experience now is a good experience or a bad experience? Bad experience. Are they going to be a potential client in the future?
No.
Probably not. So if they would have been able to say, no, we had this conversation here, remember our email? I sent you an email, remember about this? And you were okay. Now they can look back and say, oh, okay, crap, I got busted. I tried to lie. Let's say they were intensely trying to lie. Okay, yeah, oh, that's right, I did it. At least it's not blaming you. So anything you know is an important conversation. Have the conversation verbally, then back it up. Hey, per our conversation, just want to make sure we're on the same page. We said that refrigerator was not going to be included in the purchase, and you're aware of that, and you still want to move forward. Is that correct? Now they respond, that's correct. Great. Clear enough? So if you get this form, it works. Just respond back. Make sure that you get more information about the property. Okay. All right. Scroll next one. Okay. This goes into effect Saturday. What is it first? Is that tomorrow? Tomorrow. Okay. So this is offering a little bit of confusion to people. And it's not as big of an issue as people are thinking. So right now, everyone's familiar with the phrase off market, right? Okay, so here's a test. If it's off market, is the listing gone? And if you see off market on the status, can you call up that homeowner to try to be able to list their property? Okay. Couple of vocal people. Who's willing to take a risk?
I will, Rob.
Can you call that client?
No.
Okay.
Ask me why.
Why?
Because the listing is still active.
Okay.
Ask me why.
Okay. See, we just showed that he's a viable source, right? This was offering a lot of confusion. So people were prospecting. Oh, off market, great. They don't have the listing. I'm going to call up to try to take the listing. All this off market meant it was an active listing and they were not allowing showings. That's it. It was not withdrawn and it was not canceled. It was an active listing that was not allowing showings. So effective tomorrow, they're just changing the name. Still acts as it was off market, but now it's going to say active, no showings. So if you have a listing that, let's say, visitors are coming in or someone gets sick, they don't want to show the home for a weekend, whatever, and you don't want calls, so you can go in and just change the status to active, no showing for that 3-4 day week, and then and that will prevent any showings from being scheduled, and then you'd have to go in and make a change.
Does that at all affect the days on market reflected?
It does not. So when it's in off-market status, days on market will stop. Okay, so it's not continuing to tick. So days on market, so I think we're gonna actually see a different slide that'll cover part of that and all that. First, Jason.
That's the one thing that I think a lot of us don't ever utilize is there's clients that don't want you to show the home for a certain amount of time and we just kind of leave it on there. If you put it in this active no show, just even for those 5 days and that doesn't count it up for you, you're actually doing a good thing.
Your days on market. Now, if it's a day, I probably wouldn't worry about it. Hours, absolutely not. Use that on the showing time piece on preventing scheduling there. But yes, if it's multiple days and you're worried about days on market increasing, this is a way that you can prevent that during that time when it's not being shown.
It was just that question. I have someone out of town and they don't want me showing for 4 days. I just went and locked it out in showing time.
That's the way to do it, prevent the schedule, but the only difference is days on market is continuing to increase.
You're gonna require a status change on the MLS forms?
We need some notification from the seller, but I mean, even a simple email, hey, will you please change this to off market from this date to this, that part's fine. We
Email's
just,
okay.
email's fine, so. But we do need that written authorization from the client to be able to do it. Okay? That one should be a quick one. Let's go to the next one. Okay. This is we go up one more tick, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. This is questions that Jason and I get all the time, probably 6, 7, 8 times a week. And usually it's done incorrectly. And the funny part about it is, when we come to you about how to fix this issue, how to resolve the issue, it's to save you money. So now I've gotten to the point is I'll call, hey, Nick, question for you. Are you okay if I save you some money? Because then they're like, sure, hey, no problem. But otherwise, if I came back, hey, you need to do something a little bit differently. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I just asked, is it okay if I save you some money? Well, how much or what time? Because if you don't want to save money, then forget it. Just keep doing what you're doing. So if you want to save money, raise your hand. Okay. So help me, help you, and help others. All right. To learn how to do this the right way. So when we're trying, because many times you try to offer your commission to help the transaction, right? Whether it be family member, whether it be just a client that is needing the help and you're trying to be the savior and you come in and lower your commission for whatever reason. And I'm not a huge advocate of this. This is your livelihood. I believe you work hard for your money, so protect that as much as possible. But there are times where we've all done it, okay? So the first couple of questions we got to ask, who do we represent? Because depending on who you represent is the process ends up being different. So do you represent the buyer or the seller? If you represent the buyer, one of the factors that are an issue depends on what the lender will allow. Okay, if it's a cash transaction, doesn't matter then. There's not going to be an issue. But if you have a lender involved, they have certain requirements, things that you can and cannot do. If you are a parent, you can gift, a parent can gift money. Okay, so if you happen to be the parent who is representing your child on purchasing property, you can gift them. Great, that's an easier solution on how to make this happen. If you're not the parent, then it ends up being a little bit more challenging on how to get that money to the buyer. So ask the lender if they're okay with it. If you're doing it the way that, when I say it's being done wrong and it's costing more money, if you do it that way, we'll tell you what that is in a second. If you do it that way, it's going to need lender approval. If you do it the way that I suggested, it's not going to need lender approval. So I'm going to eliminate one of your hurdles, getting approval from the lender. Okay, so let's scroll up a little bit. So first part, I'm asking, if you represent the buyer and let's say that the commission's 15 grand and you want to gift $5,000 back to the buyer. Okay. Let's go back and get some courageous souls who are willing to say, how do you do it? Without reading what's here. All right.
Okay, I'm working with my brother, and I want to give him 5 grand.
Okay. What would you do? What's the first thing you think you would do? Jake's a newer licensee, so I love the courage.
I'd probably do it. I honestly probably would do it like afterward, like this is what I think.
Just give him a check.
Yeah, like
Okay.
completely unrelated to the transaction, just like after I get my money later, be like, hey, like congratulations, your new house. I just give him.
Here's a check. Okay. Thank you for taking a risk. And we're gonna answer that question in a second.
You gotta fill out an escrow instructions. I don't know if there is used as much now. It had to be signed by both brokers.
Okay, so this is where a lot of people go. So then we're gonna address this. Amy?
I find out what's the best use of the money. I mean, if we need closing costs, I mean, where can the money best be used?
Okay, but how, so,
So for example, if they needed closing costs, you could reduce the commission with the seller and have the seller.
Okay. all right, so she's going. You're going too much. You're doing stuff the right way. Don't. Stop being so smart. Okay, any other thoughts? Okay. All of these are what people are doing, but so this is why I wanted to bring it up. What do you mean writing an addendum between the buyer and seller, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And what would you say?
Just a portion of the.
$5,000 of the commission goes to the buyer. The agent's gonna contribute $5,000 of the commission towards buyer. And you put that in an addendum, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's exactly what is happening.
A lot of that depends on what sign of the buyer broker agrees to. Because
Let's assume it's a 3%.
2%, well. When we need like a permission from the brokerage to actually do that. Since we're representing the buyer, you know, like shouldn't have to do anything with the seller. They want to keep the money. Just like are we gonna do that 3%? Right,
Okay,
so.
you're bringing up a great point that'll help kind of tie a lot of this together. Any other? Just hold on to that thought if I don't address that.
Reduce sales price and get rid of commission.
Okay, so that's another option. It's another option that, and we'll talk about the process. Any other thoughts before we jump into this? Okay. So there are certain things. Maybe
What else are you seeing? It might be helpful if you say.
this is
say some-
this is what I'm gonna bring up the examples of what's being done. Okay, so Jake, first off, thank you for trying to go hit one out of the park. You swung hard and someone on your team like held a ball and like, I don't know, Jake's example, again, I thank you, happens, and it happens more than you think, and I'm here to let you know that is a division violation against the law. You can lose your license for doing what he just suggested.
Yeah.
Why?
The gift amount's only supposed to be about $200.
Okay, so you're confusing gift with a unsolicited referral, and the number is actually $250.
You can't pay someone a commission. It isn't licensed.
Okay. So Mr. Fred Law, who for many years has been in the industry, had his own company, he chimes in with the right information here. So you as a licensed real estate agent have the ability to earn commission. If you give that to someone else who's not licensed, they are not able, they're receiving a commission without a license. You are also not a broker. There's only one principal broker in the company, which is me. I'm the only one that can pay your commissions. No one else, you can't receive a commission from anybody else except for me. So when you're giving your commission away, you're doing it, and it's also, the lender's unaware of it, it's also considered fraud. So a lot of examples on that one. So thank you so much for willing to do that. Okay, let's go into some other examples what are being done. I see this all the time. Escrow instruction agreement seems to be a form that agents use when they don't know what else to use. It's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Let's put on escrow instruction agreement and they just fill it out. Let's try to solve this, answer this question right out of the gate. An escrow instruction agreement is a contract between what two parties?
Buyer and seller.
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 Listing
and
brokerage.
Yep.
Okay.
Seller and brokerage.
No? You started one.
Listing brokerage, and buyer brokerage.
Okay. So for those of you that said buyer seller, no,
That's the rep sheet.
buyer, that's the rep sheets. The buyer's brokerage and listing, or sorry, I don't know what you said.
Listing.
I was saying buyer brokerage.
Okay, so it's a document between brokerages. That's the contract. So buyer and seller have nothing to do with it. So when you're negotiating stuff that's going to be involved with the buyer and seller, and you're doing it on an escrow instruction agreement, they're not party to the contract. And the same is when you start, and this goes back to your point, when you say the BA or buyer's agent to give $5,000 commission towards buyer's closing costs, and you put that in the rep sheet, the listing brokerage and the buyer's brokerage have nothing to do with the purchase contract. So you're negotiating terms of an agreement that parties are not party to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you understand this, it makes everything make more sense why, we may come to you and say, hey, we need this document, we need that document. Like, my heavens, what's the reason why I'm doing that? Well, because the party that you've written the document for is not party to the contract. So we've got to make sure that everything is in alignment, not because we're trying to make you do extra work.
Rob, the easiest way to remember that would be who signs the actual document. And so if it's buyer and seller, those are the people that are signing it and they're agreeing to it.
So on the escrow instruction agreement, I think it may even have like
It has a place
for
for
buyer
buyer
and
and
seller to
seller.
sign.
Yeah.
And that's okay if they're made aware of it. There used to be a division rule. In order to give a gift, it used to be these three requirements. It used to say that the party paying the commission must be aware. So the seller normally is the one paying the commission. So the escrow instruction agreement was a way that they could be aware of it. They don't have to authorize it. They just have to be notified that it happened. So that was the first requirement. The second requirement was the broker whose commission it is has to authorize it. So me as the principal broker, I have to sign off and agree to it. So that's the second hurdle. The third hurdle was it has to comply with underwriter guidelines. That's where the lenders are involved in this, making sure that they're okay, not the lender. Oftentimes your loan officer, they're like, hey, yeah, we're perfectly okay with it. Just don't put it on the CD. Are they okay with it then? I guarantee it, they're not okay with it. I can't tell you how many I've had to talk to lenders. I'm like, let me get it straight. So you're telling me you're underwriter because the loan officer is going to go to the underwriter to make sure their file is approved. That underwriter does not want to see typically repairs. They don't want to see gifts. They don't want to see all this other stuff. So when the loan officer is saying, oh yeah, I've talked to the underwriter, they're fine with it. Just don't put it on the CD. They're not okay with it. Okay. So there's a little clue. Just because your lender's telling you, that's why I got to use Inspiro, because they're not going to tell you this.
So kind of a question, kind of like back to the statement earlier, let's say I have a sibling, help them get into something, and I do decide to write them like a check after. What if we can prove that it was like our personal money and not taken out of the commission? You can't I could go give somebody money today, just randomly my family.
If you're giving them a loan, obviously, yes, you can do a transaction, but I would, why are you giving them money? Just because hey, you know what? It's a Tuesday. Here's money. I mean, if you can show every Tuesday you're giving money, then I guess then that's probably, you're right. But the likelihood of this getting investigated, going down that level is probably pretty small. But just use common sense. Why are you giving the money? If you're giving the money because they bought a house, that's requires a real estate license.
Right.
If you're giving them a money because you're that kind of a sibling that you know that they need help on stuff, you're going to give them the money anyway. Well, then sure, you can defend that.
That's a good point. So when I close in a transaction, I can tell my family, sorry,
I can't do anything. I can't give you gifts. I did not say that. I did not say that. I said, you have to follow this process. Now you can translate that any way you want.
And Rob, your intro though is you're gonna tell us how to save money. So how would this save you
I'm
money
getting there.
versus doing it that way?
I will.
So what about if you were going to contribute like a certain amount of money towards a fridge?
Okay.
So would you just do escrow?
So it's still gonna be the same way that we're gonna get into this. So let me start showing the ways to save it. So first part, the escrow instruction agreement is between the brokerages. So, and it typically is going to apply with dealing with the BAC. The listing brokerage is offering a BAC on the MLS. And when that BAC is changing, that's when the escrow instruction agreement needs to be drafted. So whether it be that they're offering 2.5% to begin with, and you negotiate to pay a 3%, you got to get an escrow instruction agreement that shows that that listing brokerage is now willing to change the BAC that's on the MLS and now pay 3%. That is your golden ticket.
In that circumstance, though, would the seller have to sign as well because the money changes?
They do not. So that was the change in the division. The division no longer requires that the party paying the commission is notified. It is a commit because the commission is not being paid by the seller. The commission is owed by the listing brokerage.
So.
Hold on a second. Don't get, Amy, you know this. We're not going down other rabbit holes before we get all this other stuff. So that's important to know. The commission that is being paid on the BAC it's owed by the listing brokerage. So many of you on your listing contracts, you take a list. If you go back and look at section 2, it says it has 2 blank lines. The first blank line and the second blank line. The second blank line shows what's going to be paid on the BAC. So let's say that you take a 6% commission, and some of you are putting 3% in the top line and 3% in the bottom line. And what you just did is you gave your entire commission of 3% to the BAC, because that top line is supposed to be the total commission, what the listing brokerage and the BAC is going to be. So the top line should be 6%, of which you're giving 3% to the BAC. So if the seller is unwilling to sign an addendum correcting that mistake, you're already offering 3% of the BAC on the MLS. And if you're under contract at this point and you don't get that listing agreement fixed, you're working for free. So this goes back to what I said. If, and we had this on a call yesterday, we got the title companies calling me, of all people. They had a question about the escrow instruction agreement, and they kept telling me, well, the listing contract says this, or the buyer contract says that. I'm like, I don't care what the listing contract says. I don't care what the buyer contract says. Our contract is with this other brokerage. Fortunately, I knew the other brokerage, their CEO very well, and I just got him on the phone. And I just said, Steve, please explain to your title company that I don't need to know what your listing contract says. You owe us X dollars, right? He's right. Just pay him the money. That contract is with the other brokerage. I don't need to care. I don't care what the other. That's now that brokerage will have to go back to their seller and hopefully renegotiate whatever their commission was. But I didn't need to be part of that. So this first part is that contract is between listing brokerage and buyer's brokerage. This is where it's going to be the difference. Okay, so when you lower your commission, the way to save you money is this. When you give $5,000 away, do you have to in order for you to give something, don't you have to have it first?
Yeah.
Can I go give Nick's car away?
You can try.
I can try. Hey, it's a great car. Here, just go ahead and take it, Amy. It's not mine to give. So in order to give something, I have to have it first, right?
Right.
So, and when you have it, in this case, money, you're going to be taxed on it. You're going to pay fees on it. The Century 21 franchise can say, wait, you got $15,000. I want 6% on 15 grand. You're going to be taxed based on 15 grand. Now you can go back afterwards and write it off and go at the back end, or we can lower the commission from $15,000 to $10,000, so you only got 10 grand. And now you only pay 6% on the 10 grand, you're split on the 10 grand versus on the 15. That's how I save you some money.
Yep.
Are you okay with that? Or would you rather pay the 6% you're split and taxed on the extra 5 grand that you technically never got?
Yeah, you don't want to put the excellent money.
That's where you're going to save the money. Does it require a little more paperwork? Yes, it does. So what is needed? Great. Now that you type up an escrow instruction agreement, and we're going to say, I got it right here. So this first part, it just says BAC shall be reduced from $15,000 to $10,000 in the event that the seller agrees to pay $5,000 towards the buyer's closing costs. Okay,
Section there.
the seller is able to give closing costs, and does the lender have a problem with that?
No.
They don't have a problem at all. So now I've avoided this lender approval. So now the listing brokerage and I sign this. You're not the broker. Even Nick, as a broker, he's not able to sign that unless I gave, there's certain broker like Jason Carlson. He's one of our risk management team. He's able to sign these. Part of our risk management, but technically the broker is the one that's only authorized to sign it. So when this gets signed, now that is binding. The only way that that commission lowers from 15 to 10 is if now we do the addendum with buyer and seller. So addendum for in the purchase contract, seller agrees to pay $5,000. Well, actually use the closing cost addendum. Use the closing cost addendum that's there, and all you have to do is put $5,000 in that space. And seller's now going to pay $5,000 towards the buyer's closing costs. And then the other thing that we asked to have done is getting an addendum to your buyer broker agreement that says that the commission is being reduced by 5 grand. The reason why we say that, this is just added protection for the company, because we get audited every 2 years from the franchise. And if they saw that our contract with our buyer said one thing and we got less than that, they could come back and say, well, oh, you should have gotten the 3%. So therefore, we're going to charge you 6% on that. And that, 2 years worth of transactions, all of a sudden you could have $150,000 penalty that we want. So we're asking for that additional addendum to show that no, our contract was for $5,000 less. That's why we're adding that part isn't required by the division, not quite part of the state. We're doing that is for our company trying to minimize any potential issue. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Who does not understand that? Do you see where money is being saved?
So you have to do the 2 forms, the escrow instruction and the addendum, every single time you go.
In order to do that, to lower that commission. Now, if you represent the seller, you do not have to do that. This is only if you represent the buyer. If you represent the seller, do I need to tell the buyer's side that, hey, I'm lowering my commission? Not at all. Has nothing to do with them. So I see this as the same thing is I get an addendum that's put in the contract or an escrow instruction agreement. Listing agent reduce their commission by $5,000. Like escrow instruction agreement has nothing to do with it. You only need to do an addendum to the ERS that says you're lowering your commission. And I put it on here. These are the best way to do it. Section 2 of the ERS shall be 6% plus 295 minus $5,000. Because too many mistakes, people make this. When we ask you guys to adjust that 295, first off, that is not a transaction fee. That is not an admin fee. There's a reason why we don't use that language, because there was a lawsuit in Texas that the courts found out that they interpreted that as being what's considered a junk fee, which you cannot do. And they came back and fined the brokerage and the agents. It was part of a class action lawsuit. So this 295 we just include that as part of our brokerage fee. the 6% plus 295 brokerage fee. So if you are waiving your 295, for example, don't say we're waiving 295 transaction fee. The brokerage fee shall be, let's say you got 6% plus 295 right now. Section 2 of the ERS shall be 6% brokerage fee. So I change in the contract, it says 6% plus 295. Now I make the change, it now just says 6%. I automatically got rid of the 295, but it's all the brokerage fee. Does that make sense? So that's the same way you're doing here. If you're gonna give part of your commission back to the seller, it's their money to begin with, where it's starting. So just lower, because this other way, if you got paid agents wanted to do this. They want to get paid the commission only to give it back to the seller. They'd have to pay money on that total amount. You don't want to do that. So just lower the brokerage fee as a whole.
The other thing that I do, and you've seen this with me, is if I have a buyer broker agreement, so I get 3%. I talk to the listing agent when I'm sending in an offer, and I discuss the fact that I needed 3%, and they're only offering 2 or 2.5. I then I usually get an approval if I give them a good offer. With the Repsy, I send over a escrow instruction showing it will be 3%.
Perfect.
Okay.
So now you're negotiating your commission from a 2 to 3,
Right.
which you would need an escrow instruction agreement to do, to get that. Okay.
Two things, can we get a copy of this?
Yes, I'll be able to email this stuff out. In fact, we'll send it out to Jake and he'll email it over.
Good. Second thing, like, let's say like someone brought like their, like a fridge, right? Like, where the closing cost, you just replace that.
Yeah, so-
Like fridge. Minus fridge cost.
I am about simplicity.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to go buy the fridge, or are you trying to give money that can go be contributed towards, are you gonna go and physically go pick out the fridge? And if you buy a fridge and it has problems, are they gonna come back to you? Or would you rather just give them money and let them handle the hassle? When stuff like this is offered that keeps you handcuffed to the transaction, I'm about simplicity. So if you're going to buy $1,000 fridge, just give them $1,000, which can be done the way that we're doing it. So you're going to give them, lenders don't typically like buyers to get money at the transaction in hand. So you got to think this out. Instead of giving them $1,000 cash, if they were needing closing costs to be paid, have the seller pay $1,000 in closing costs. So now that's $1,000 less that they have to bring to the table so that they can take that $1,000 and go buy the fridge. So just simple. People think I try to make things complex. No, I want to make it simple. So that's how you handle the fridge.
So what if you already got closing costs paid
Okay.
by the seller, and then you're still going to contribute? the
Yeah,
buyer
so
out?
that's always the tough question. If there's closing costs can't be used and you're still trying to get money to the other side. If that is the case, then you're gonna have to have a conversation with the lender, because more than likely, the lender may not be okay with it. And you can say, hey, can the seller get something back? Can we put this towards prepaid, like increasing, like instead of 2 months reserves of HOA, can we pay a year's worth of reserves of HOA? Try to see how you can use that money to be used differently. But if you're really trying to give the money to the buyer, lenders are not going to be okay with that. Fair enough, fair to say, Aaron? So you gotta talk to the lender, see if it's even possible. Okay, and we're got a few minutes left. Are we good up?
I just have a question, where you're talking 6% plus 295, newer agents, that 295 can be anything.
Yeah,
So.
6% plus 495 plus,
Just so newer people know,
correct,
it can be whatever you want for that extra fee.
when it's the brokerage fee. And you can use that, it's part of your commission, so just use it however you want to use it. It just needs to be on there. Okay, this will be real quick. We sent a Tuesday tip about this just yesterday. This is a reminder, our company has this non-refundable contingency waiver disclosure. What is happening, fortunately, it's less because we're not seeing as crazy offers. But when you are negotiating offers where you are waiving your contingencies, so it's not subject to due diligence, it's not subject to finance and appraisal, or you're offering non-refundable earnest money at some point up front, please make sure that you use this form, get your buyer to sign this, because it happens every time. I get the client, after the deal falls apart, they claim that they never agreed to a non-refundable. They would never have signed a contract that waived their contingencies, yet I've got their signature on a contract. So you guys apparently just, covered everything up, put their signature on it, and they didn't read it. It's your fault for not explaining it to them, but it comes back all the time. If that were to happen, I mean, I can go back and like, so you're telling me you signed a contract with everything here that says you agree to these terms. And then we even went one step further to really make you understand what you were agreeing to. And you signed that form as well, and it wasn't explained to you. Well, shame on you. Shouldn't do that. This protects you. Please make sure you're using this. Even if this isn't something that's going to be a big deal, I would personally have every buyer sign this, whether you do this or not, because what happens when you're sitting with your buyer, you get documents signed. They don't think that they're going to make an offer that is going to require anything like this. You make 3-4 attempts on writing offers, and then all of a sudden you write one that does this, and you never get this form signed. So I would just get this signed up front. All it is a disclosure that if you do this, you've explained the process to them, what they're getting involved with. It's not going to hurt.
Another thing that on this one is you might want to consider once you get to your end of your deadlines, that you have this conversation and just have them sign it, because there's a lot of times you get to your end of your finance and appraisal deadline, you still have 4 or 5 days before the end, and
You're gonna
lenders
remove it.
teetering back and forth. But as soon as you know your earnest money is going to go hard, non-refundable.
Hard doesn't exist.
Yeah, non-refundable. If you just have this disclosure and just have them sign it, that will protect you through the whole process. So it's not just if I'm writing my offer and it's got non-refundable earnest money right up front. This is a process of acknowledging that I could lose my earnest money right now, and I'm not going to get it back if I don't close on this deal. This protects you and they can't come back.
Just added disclosure.
So when would you want to get this signed? Before due diligence?
For me,
Like if.
the way that I would want this to.
Yeah.
So when I sit down with my buyer, before I even go show property, I'm having them sign the buyer broker. Having them sign due diligence. I have them sign the wire fraud. I have them sign the affiliate. I would have them sign this. I get all of that at the very beginning. Then I go show homes. Then I think it's a great reminder, if you go under contract, hey, we already signed this. Since we're gonna make an offer that doesn't have, remember, this is what this means. Or you're now in the transaction, they're approaching their due diligence deadline. As a reminder, this is what that means, but sooner the better. But if you're getting it day before due diligence, it's better than not having it. Day after due diligence doesn't help as much. So yeah, sooner than later. Good question. Any other questions on this? We blow through this last one real quick. Okay. So this is a proposed change with the MLS that is occurring, and it'll probably happen. We have a voting, I want to say November, then our November Board of Director meeting. We're going to be voting on making this change, and I'm pretty confident that it'll be changed. And if that's the case, it'll probably take 30 to, probably 60 days for the MLS code or the text to make the code change. But just to give you more as a FYI, right now we have days on market and we have cumulative days on market. That's what shows on the MLS. And there are a lot of agents that are going in and canceling listings for the purpose and relisting it, whether it be the same day tomorrow, because they want to reset the days on market and then also get things posted out as a new listing. I get it. Makes and probably works. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. But what it is, and what we can show, there's a Article 12 of the Code of Ethics where it talks about misrepresentation on your advertising. An argument is that it's misleading and you're misrepresenting what is truly being done. So days on market currently is tracked by MLS. So by canceling the listing, getting a new MLS number, it will reset it. The change that's going to happen is basically this is going to go away. And it's going to be mostly this, but it's going to be called days on market. So the days on market, as you're going to see it when the change occurs, it will be tied to the tax ID number only. So if you did cancel the listing, trying to do what is being done now, it wouldn't reset. Because it's going to be tied to the tax ID number. And I'm also telling you, for those, believe it or not, I never even think of doing these things until they're brought to my attention. That's when I know what's going out there in your minds on ways to manipulate the stuff. Those of you that accidentally make a type error and type in the tax ID number incorrectly so that you can now reset your days on market, and it seems to happen often, you're going to lose your MLS access. So accurate information, and you probably be written up on a code of ethics. So it happens. People like your tax ID number ends with a 0. They put a 1 there. So now it's a new tax ID number and they can go ahead and override this. And then, oh, that was a mistake. Not a mistake when it happens 10 times throughout the year. All right. Okay. So what big change is going to happen is right now on CDOM, it will reset after 90 days. That will change to 30 days. So that's where they've looked at the data across the country to see what is comparable for the same kind of tracking information. So if a listing is off the market for 30 days and you then relist it, it will show up with a new 0 days on market if it's off the market for 30 days. If this is how it resets, if the property is sold and then it goes on the market the next day, of course, no different. It's going to be reset to a new listing. If you have a certificate of occupancy, this is something that people don't really know. Those of you that are dealing with new construction, something's been on the market for 280 days. Once you receive a certificate of occupancy, you can send that into the MLS and it'll get a new 0 days on market to try to sell that home that's been, now it's ready to be completed. Or if it's not listed for the 30 days. But it's going to go this direction instead of what we currently have. And so we're only going to see one thing, days on market, but it'll be calculated off of that. Does that make sense? Just scroll down to the and be the code of ethics.
The summary of actual changes.
That's what we just went over. I just said that, so keep going more. So this is what I was trying to point out. It's kind of hard to see right there. Under Article 12, this talks specifically about your advertising. Realtors shall be honest and truthful in their real estate communications and shall present a true picture in their advertising, marketing, and other representations. So, you can have two different arguments. One may say, hey, I'm not trying to manipulate. Another one may say that you are. The key thing just keep in mind is anything like this happens, the way that a code of ethics violation occurs is you're going to be sitting across from a panel of your peers. So half the panel or 60% of the panel may say that is manipulation. The other 40% may say that it's not. There's an argument either way. So just know that I don't think people are trying to do it because hey, I'm trying to do this or that. They're trying to get their property sold. I know that's what's trying to happen. Whether or not it's considered manipulation, that's for other people to determine. So just be careful of and cautious of that.
A question on the DOM for the certificate of occupancy. Is that when a builder is building it, he's got it under an MLS, then there's a occupancy permit given, then they can reset it.
They can reset it. Yep.
That's the only chance that would work though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't see it because otherwise you're not going to have
Yeah.
you're not going to need a certificate of occupancy
Right,
otherwise.
right. Okay.
So, but yeah, that's what the builder can do. So questions. I know we went through a lot.
So this is gonna be implemented, or they're voting on it?
So in November, and one of the board of directors, we have a meeting in November where we're gonna be voting on that issue. And so it hasn't been approved yet. This is the proposal, what they're presenting to us. So I just wanted to share it with you, but I'll be shocked if it doesn't pass. So, and if it does pass in November, it can take 60 days-ish for the technology guys to make the code change, to make it represent the way it is before it goes live.
Oh,
So we're looking January, February with this would start. But still, but I do know this code of ethics argument, that's already in play. So meaning if you're, oh, I'll wait till they make the change. They're talking about this, implementing this now for those that are doing it. If they make the change, this is gonna take care of itself. So I'm telling you, if that's what you're doing, I would highly discourage you from doing that right now. So, any other thoughts? I know we're out of time, so. Okay, I know there's a lot of information. Hopefully that was helpful. Did I save you some money?
Yes.
Yes.
Saved you some money. All right, that's all we wanted to accomplish.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, guys, thank you.